Thank you, Brother Tom. Good morning. Hope everybody's had a wonderful week and is ready for another week to come about. Hopefully the rain is going to subside a little bit because my grass is getting to where I'm going to have Keith come bale it. I want to ask you all a very serious question this morning. Do you consider yourself a good friend? We all have our circle of friends that we like to hang out with, interact with. We've had lessons that speak of surrounding ourselves with good Christian friends, but look at yourself and ask yourself, am I a good friend? A British newspaper offered a prize for the definition of what a good friend was, and they had some interesting answers. One of those answers, there it is, one who divides joy, or one who multiplies joy and divides grief. Another one who understands your silence. The winning answer, one who comes in when the whole world goes out. What kind of friend are you? Oprah Winfrey said, lots of people want to ride with you in the limo, but what you want is someone who'll take the bus with you when the limo breaks down. And I like what Irma Bomback, a newspaper column writer, said, a friend is someone who thinks you're a good egg even though you're a little cracked. It's important to surround ourselves with good friends, but it's equally as important that we be the same kind of friend that we want to have in our lives. The examples we're going to look at are some friends that came to David's aid when he was going through a very challenging time. We've been reading through David's story, and he's been through a lot. He has had to deal with the fallout that came from his adulterous relationship with Bathsheba. He's had to deal with the rape of his daughter by his firstborn son, the murder of his firstborn son by his thirdborn son, and then in chapter 15, that son, Absalom's going to attempt a coup. 2 Samuel chapter 15, verse 6, it says that Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. He turned David's kingdom against him. David has to escape from his own home. His people turn against him. His own counsel turn against him. But it's during that escape that David's friends come to light. And hopefully we can take a closer look at some of David's friends this morning and see if we measure up ourselves to what it means to be a good friend. So 2 Samuel chapter 15, verses 18 through 22. And all his servants passed by David, and all the Cherethites and all the Pelethites, and all the 600 Gittites who had followed him from Gath passed on before the king. And then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, why do you also go with us? Go back and stay with the king, for you are a foreigner and also an exile from your home. You came only yesterday, and shall I today make you wander about with us? And since I go, I know not where. Go back and take your brothers with you, and may the Lord show steadfast love and faithfulness to you. David has an interesting history with the people of Gath. In fact, the people of Gath, they were known for their warrior mentality. That's where a lot of your great mercenaries came from. Their battle prowess. They were known for their great size. They were a large people. In fact, David defeated their champion. Goliath was from Gath. David took him out. Later on, when David is running from Saul, David goes to the land of Gath and stays there for a while to get away from Saul. But now we read about a group of mercenaries coming to Jerusalem. In fact, some of them had only been there a day. They had no idea what they were stepping into. They had no idea what was going on. But they were foreigners. They were exiles. They had no place to go, no home to lay their heads. And so they get there, and the very next day they see the king. Well, he's leaving because his son is causing a rebellion. And they follow him. And David goes to Ittai, and he's like, look, you don't need to follow me. I don't know where I'm going to go, but it'd be better for you to stay here. Don't follow me. And listen to what Ittai says. He says, as the Lord lives, verse 21, as the Lord lives and as my Lord the King lives, wherever my Lord the King shall be, whether for death or for life, there also will your servant be. Think about the loyalty that Ittai is showing, the dedication to David. What kind of friend was he? He was going to follow David no matter what. It didn't matter where David was going to go. He's going to follow him. And I read this story and it reminds me of Ruth. You remember the story of Ruth. Ruth married an Israelite, and they leave their home in Bethlehem. They go to a foreign land. And there, what happens? Well, Ruth's father-in-law, he dies. Her husband, he dies. Her brother-in-law, he dies. And she's left with Naomi, her mother-in-law, and a sister-in-law. And Naomi tells them, you need to go back to your home. You don't need to stay with me. They were in a foreign land. The odds were against those widows in that time. It was bleak. It was hopeless. Naomi says, go back to your family. The other daughter-in-law goes. But what does Ruth say in Ruth chapter 1? Ruth says, do not urge me to leave you or return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. And when you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything, but death parts me from you. And Ruth and Ataya, they show us what it means to be a loyal friend. Because they're willing to stand by somebody they know, somebody they care about, even when that person is going through a very troubling time. Do you know somebody that's going through a troubling time right now? Do you know someone that's lost a job, that's wrestling with an addiction, that maybe they're just down in the dumps? They're just down in the dumps. Maybe you know somebody that's moving, because you always find out who your true friends are when you're getting ready to move. They'll either be there or they won't. We all want our friends to be there for us when we're going through challenging times. We all want our friends to be there for us when we're dealing with heartbreak. We all want our friends to be there for us when we need to move a couch. A loyal friend will be there. And being loyal means that maybe we need to step out of our comfort zone a little bit. Maybe we need to reach out. Maybe we need to sacrifice a bit of our time. And so that can come across in many different ways. We take the time to help somebody develop a resume. We take the time to visit them when they're in recovery. We take the time just to send them a text and say, hey, I know you're going through a tough time and I care. And I'm here for you. And I want to encourage you. I want to be there for you. I appreciate what Brother Tom said. He said, Proverbs 18:24, Solomon says, a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother, and that is a loyal friend, a dedicated friend. And I know we only have David's story here, but I have to believe that David's spirit rose just a little bit, because Ataya came to him and said, I'm going to go with you no matter what. I'm going to follow you. Go back to 2 Samuel. Verses 24 through 29. And Abiathar came up, and behold, Zadok came also with all the Levites, bearing the ark of the covenant of God. And they set down the ark of God until the people had all passed out of the city. Then the king said to Zadok, carry the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and let me see both it and his dwelling place. But if he says, I have no pleasure in you, behold, here I am, let him do to me what seems good to me. And the king also said to Zadok the priest, are you not a seer? Go back to the city in peace with your 2 sons. See, I will wait at the fords of the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me. And so Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark of God back to Jerusalem, and they remained there. So David and those that are loyal to him are leaving the city. They're going out. And here comes Abiathar and Zadok, the priest. And they're doing something very dangerous. We read earlier that it was a hazardous thing to move the ark. You had to be very careful. You had to do it in a specific way. But they're getting the ark. They're going to follow David out of the city. They understand that the ark going with David means that David is the true king. God is with him. That's what the people would see if the ark went with David. But to David's credit, he's a little wiser than he was when he brought the ark into the city the first time. He's not going to use the ark as a good luck charm. He's not going to use it to his advantage. The ark belongs in the city of Jerusalem, in the city of God, and so he tells Abiathar and Zadok, take it back. Take it back. If God favors me, he'll bring me back here. And if he doesn't, let him do to me what he will. But David is going to be, he's going to be faithful to God. He's going to let God be in control of the situation. And he tells his two loyal friends, they're just like Ittai, they're going to follow David, but he says, I want you to go back and be at peace. You know, my son's coming and he's going to take over, but I want you to be at peace. So what do I want us to see here about what it means to be a good friend? They listened to David. They didn't want to go back to this city. They wanted to go with their friend. I mean, they had the ark. They had everything packed, ready to follow him. But David's like, no, I want you to take it back. I want you to stay. Now, he had a motive for that. They were going to be his spies, but they were willing to listen to him. A lot of times with our friends, you know, we have different perspectives. And so if we have a friend and a friend's going through a troubling time, we may bring them a piece of advice. Because we see things from the outside, they're on the inside, and we come to them, hey, this will help you. Now, if you went to somebody that was in need with some information, with an idea, and they didn't want it, how would you react? Sometimes 50-50, I think I'd half the time be like, all right, you got it. Deal with it. But what if they said, this is what I need you to do instead? This is how you can help me. This is how you can encourage me. This is how you can show your support for me. As friends, you know, we're to be there for our friends as a good friend. Sometimes being there means just listening to what they need. Being mindful of where they're at and listening to them. Remember the story. A gentleman named Mike came home from work one day. He lived in an apartment complex. And at the steps, there was these two little girls crying, just bawling their eyes out. And Mike thought they were hurt when he saw them, and so he ran over to them and he said, Jennifer, Katie, that was her name. He said, Jennifer, what's wrong? And Jennifer held up her baby doll, and the arm had come off. She's like, my baby doll's arm came off. It's the worst thing in the world. And Mike smiled, and he took the baby doll in the arm, and he wrestled with it a little bit, and he popped that arm back on, and he gave it back to her, and her eyes just dried up. She smiled. She said, thank you. And then he looked at her friend Katie. He said, Katie, what's wrong with you? And Katie she said, well, Jennifer just wanted me to cry with her. That's all she needed. That's all she needed. Sometimes we just need to listen to our friends when they're in trouble. They don't need us to suggest anything. They just want us to listen. They just want us to be there. And that's what Abiathar and Zadok did. They listened. Go back to 2 Samuel chapter 15, verses 32 through 37. David was coming to the summit where God was worshipped, and behold, Hushai the Archite came to meet him with his coat torn and dirt on his head. And David said to him, if you go on with me, you will be a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, I will be your servant, O king, as I have been your father's servant in time past, so now I will be your servant. Then you will defeat for me the counsel of, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that guy's name. And that's what Hushai did. David needed someone to be his eyes and ears. He had the priest. He needed somebody to get close to his wayward son, his rebellious son. And Hushai could fill that role. Now, Hushai showed loyalty like Ittai. Hushai showed that he was willing to listen and follow his friend's request like the priest did. But I want you to notice something else in verse 32. When he came to David, he had a torn robe and dirt on his head. He mourned his king leaving Jerusalem. He hurt with David at the whole situation. Hushai was what we might call empathetic. He knew how David felt. He understood. We back up to verse 30 of that same chapter. We read that David was weeping as he went, barefoot, his head covered, and all the people who were with him, they covered their heads. They were weeping as they went as well. David's going through a terrible, terrible time. His own people, his own flesh and blood has turned against him. You go back and read what happened after Absalom killed his brother. Well, he ran away, and then you have this scenario play out where this woman comes to David and they talk, and David forgives Absalom, brings him back home, and what does Absalom do? He turns David's own people against him. He stands outside the gate. I can imagine what David is going through. I can imagine the pain that he's feeling, the hurt at having to leave his own city. And here comes one of his dear friends. And his dear friend hurts for David. He's torn his robes. He's covered his head with dirt. He's mourning. Many times, I'm not a fan of funerals. I just don't like them. But I go. I go because I care about those that are hurting. I go because they're my friends and I want to be there for them. And I've come to understand that whether I'm playing a part in the funeral or I'm just there, there's nothing I can say that will really take that pain away. They're hurting. And I can't ever understand completely what they're going through, but I know they're hurting. And the words are there for comfort. The words that I offer are there for support. And you know this because you do it as well. When our friends have lost a loved one, we go there to be there for them. Because we hurt with them. And we want to be there to let them know we care. To listen, to cry with them, to cry for them. That's what it means to be empathetic. That's what it means to care for your friends. And that can be challenging sometimes. It can be challenging when we have friends that they just seem to make the same mistake over and over again. And we get frustrated because we want to help them and we've helped them, but they don't seem to learn. I'm reminded of what Paul told the Philippians in Philippians chapter 2. Paul says, so if there is any encouragement in Christ, any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, any affection and sympathy, complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. And let each one of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others. Hushai could have came to David and said, David, you know what? This is your own fault. Because you started this pebble rolling down a hill a long time ago when you took Bathsheba as your own wife. You had an adulterous affair. You killed her husband. And then when your own son raped your daughter, you did nothing. It's all on you, buddy. But he didn't. He was there for his friend. He was willing to put his own interest to the side for David. David, I'm going to go back and I'm going to fake supporting your son here for you because I'm loyal to you. That's the kind of friend that we need to be. That's the kind of Christian brother or sister that we need to be because we all know people that are struggling, whether it's their fault or their own, and we got to be there for them. Just let them know, hey, I'm there for you. I'll be there for you. I'll stand by you. I'll hurt with you. You have a friend in me. It was fitting, the last song that Calvin led us in before the lesson. Did you plan that? It's pretty good. I was sitting there, I caught there at the end of it, I was like, I'm glad he picked that song. What a friend we have in Jesus. Do our friends say that about us? What a friend I have in Justin. What a friend I have in Ricky. Do our friends say that when they think about us? One more point in the lesson is yours this morning. In chapter 18, we read about David raising up an army to fight against Absalom and all of Israel because he's got Israel in his pocket. Now, David wants to go with his men, but they won't allow it. They need David. David's too important. They understand his worth. He's too valuable. And so David remains at the gate of Mahanaim, the city where they've kind of went after they have escaped. And these armies clash, and David's men, well, they went out. They're victorious. God is with them. Now, Absalom, he's with his men, but in battle, he gets caught in some branches. And he's kind of hanging there, and that's where Joab finds him. And Joab, well, he executes him. Takes 2 spears and puts him down. You would think that everything would be okay, everything would be happy, but the chapter ends, David is filled with shame and mourning because his son is dead. And so we get to chapter 19. Chapter 19 is really shows a different kind of friend that we have to be from time to time. Let's start with verse 5. Joab came to the house. The king is in mourning. He's crying for his son. He's grieving. He's in shame. Joab came into the house to the king and said, "You have today covered with shame the faces of all your servants, who have this day saved your life and the lives of your sons and your daughters and the lives of your wives and your concubines, because you love those who hate you and you hate those who love you. For you have made it clear today that commanders and servants are nothing to you. For today I know that if Absalom were alive and all of us were dead today, then you would be pleased. Now therefore arise, go out and speak kindly to your servants, for I swear by the Lord, if you do not go, not a man will stay with you this night, and this will be worse for you than all the evil that has come upon you from your youth until now." We have to be friends that are loyal. We have to be friends that listen. Friends that are empathetic to what others are going through. But sometimes we've got to be a friend that stands firm and stands up to others. Joab had the courage to face his king and call him out. He called David out and he drew a line in the sand. You're going to do this or it's going to get a whole lot worse for you. David was mourning a man, Absalom, who had rebelled against God, who had rebelled against the law. He rebelled against David. He took David's concubine and had a relationship with him in front of all of Israel. He did all these horrible things. And David's mourning him. David is bringing shame upon the house of God because he's mourning this heathen. And Joab called the king out on his error. Why are you doing this? Why are you shaming? Why are you turning your back to a people that were loyal to you and warning a guy that rebelled against you, that turned against you? That may be the greatest mark of a good friend. Because sometimes we see others doing wrong and we need to stand up to them. A friend is loyal. A friend listens. A friend shares in joy, shares in sadness. But a true friend will stand up to those they care about, to let them know when they're living in error. Galatians chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. Brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual do what? Restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. And then David says in Psalm 141, verse 5, he says, "Let a righteous man strike me. It is a kindness. Let him rebuke me. It is oil for my head, and let my head not refuse it." What kind of friend are you? Are you a friend that's loyal? Are you a friend that listens? Are you a friend that shows that they care? Most of all, are you a friend that will stand up for what is right? Are you a friend like Jesus is a friend to all of us? I value each and every friendship that God has blessed me with. And I hope and I pray that I will be the friend that they need me to be. Jesus Christ is our greatest friend. He's our best friend. Why? Because he gave his life for all of us. I believe Jesus says, no greater friend than this, that one is who lays down his life for his friends. Jesus laid down his life for all of us. He is the example we have. He is who we all should strive to follow. As we close this morning, if there is anyone who is not a part of the body of Christ, who is not a friend of Jesus, make that decision to become part of Christ's body today. One does that by hearing the gospel, believing in Jesus Christ and what He did, repenting of their sins, being baptized into the Lord's church. If you are a Christian but you've fallen away, you've let sin into your life, the Lord is always open and listening, ready to hear your confession and forgive you. If you have any need, please come this morning as we stand.